Hello, and welcome to the MMA Mic Drop Podcast. This is episode number 5. My name is Jade Bunky, and I am joined by the one and only Milo McGregor, and we are going to break down everything that went down in Austin, Texas this last Saturday. What a fight card it was, particularly the main event between Tsarukyan and Dariush. We're also going to break down next week's fight card, Song Yadong and Chris Gutierrez. We're only just going to give predictions for the fights on the main card. But for this fight card, we're going to talk about not only what went down, we're also going to talk about what matches to make next. And in the preview, Milo and I both gave our pre-grades, what we expected out of this fight. I graded it in terms of, I think, quality an A. In terms of expectation, or in terms of excitement, I gave it an A+. And you know, if we are to grade this card now, for me, I think it's a no-brainer. This was an A+. This fight card was absolutely nuts. It had a little bit of everything. It had title implications. It had back and forth wars. It had some creative some creative finishes. And Milo, I'm sure, is happy because the person he wanted to get knocked out got knocked out, and he got knocked out hard. Milo, how would you grade this fight card?
Whatever's after an A. Whatever's better than A+.
There we go. A+++.
Yep.
Yeah, this was a great fight card. And we're going to go down. We're going to break down every single fight because this was, for a free fight night card, this was unequivocally the best card of the year, and it definitely delivered. So let's start right away. Tsarukyan versus Dariush. I thought this would go the distance, and Tsarukyan made sure it did not go the distance. He knocked out Dariush in 64 seconds. And what I found fascinating with this is he comes in with the knee and his feet are not fully planted, and then he just blasts him. I don't know how he was able to generate that type of power without his feet fully being set. That was incredible. Milo, what were your thoughts?
I mean, since the last time I saw him fight Islam, he's gotten a lot better. It's been 4 years, I think. He made a comment on it. But he looked really good, and he looked like he matured a lot. So yeah.
Well, and that's the question, because now it's like, you know, who against whom do you match him now? Because he just beat number 4, and I think he's good enough for a rematch now. But there's a couple other people who are ahead of him. Charles Oliveira Charles Oliveira is next in line, and I think that's well deserved. I know a lot of people are saying Gaethje should be next. I've even heard a couple people say Tsarukyan should get the title shot now. I don't think so. He's still only 27, and I think there are a couple people ahead of him. Charles Oliveira for sure, and then I do think Justin Gaethje. I think Justin Gaethje should get the fight after that. I think he's earned that. So I would match him up next against Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier is number 3. I think it's the logical fight to make. He doesn't have a fight. Throw this on the card at UFC 300, which will probably take place in April. And, you know, look for Tsarukyan to get a title shot within the next year and a half. I mean, he is legit, 100% legit. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking Dustin too, but I think he's gonna have to make his way up through this. I don't think he'd be the popular pick to go against Islam right away, so that seems like the most logical choice.
Yeah, you know, and that's a great point, right? You're going to minimize the amount of buzz you're going to have around that fight if you make that too soon. If he takes out Beneil Dariush and then Dustin Poirier, you know, people are going to start saying, oh my God, look at this guy. Because there's only 2 losses in the UFC, like you said, Islam, and then Mateus Gamrot, who is, again, an elite level, I think, title contender as well in this division, and he barely won that fight. Many people thought Tsarukyan won. So Tsarukyan is right there. He's only 27, keeps getting better. He is fun to watch. Now, what's interesting, when we were, you know, after we recorded this last show, I went and I watched again, and, you know, my pick, I said, all right, Beneil, you know, Dariush by decision. And I thought, why did I say that? I think Tsarukyan's going to win. And it's funny because if the fight did not play out like this, I probably wouldn't admit this. I would say, oh yeah, it was just like I called it. Tsarukyan, beat Dariush. But the one thing I did not expect a first round finish. I know they're both capable in both their respective disciplines. to be able to finish. And I shouldn't say respective disciplines because they're both truly mixed martial artists. Where I think Beneil is a little better on the ground, but I was not expecting that, and how he did it was as remarkable as it can possibly get. And so you move over to Dariush. He's lost 2 in a row, but he's lost to the elite of the elite in the division. He lost to Charles Oliveira. He lost to Sarukian, but it really shows he's not that top 5 fighter anymore. So where is he, in terms of between 5 and 10 maybe? Or has he dropped even more because he is 35 years old? Do you have anybody against whom you would like to match him up next, or would you like me to? Okay. So I'm going to say something absolutely crazy that's going to make notes.
Pause 1 sec.
Yeah, I know. I saw
really?
your dad run up.
Dude.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait,
we'll leave this in.
Okay.
We'll leave it in. Tell your dad he's going to win Cook of the Week for
going in the
5
screen?
out of 4. Yeah, 4 of our first 5 shows for that. All right. So Dariush, I'm going to say something absolutely crazy. So my original thinking was, maybe against Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker, I believe, is he's another number 9 or number 10. I think that's a fun matchup. But then I'm thinking Dariush, he may be finished as an elite level fighter. And I don't want to say finished. He still can probably beat most guys in this division. But I'm thinking about giving him a young up and comer. And then I'm thinking Benoit Saint Denis, and I got somebody. I don't want him to go that high yet because I have better ideas for that. I'm going to go with somebody who's far down the rankings. I'm going to go Terrence McKinney. And the reason why is I think Terrence McKinney has an opportunity to catch lightning in a bottle. He's that type of athlete. Yes, he's an incredibly flawed fighter. If it goes into the second round, you never know what's going to happen. But he's somebody that can go on a roll against some high-level competition because he, as I mentioned before, in the first 60 seconds of a fight, he might be the best fighter in the UFC for the first 60 seconds. I would gamble and I would match him up with McKinney. Again, I haven't heard anybody suggest this matchup. It is pretty far out there. Usually have people similar in the rankings or somebody that's really rising quickly. That's on the radar of a lot of people. McKinney's not on the radar of many people, but the thing is, he fights so frequently. Have him beat a big name if he can, and then you can ride that out. And if he loses, well, then Dariush, gets a quick bounce back win, and then you can match him up with somebody else in the top 10 again. What are your thoughts?
I think give Dariush Saint Denis.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So you're throwing him right to the Saint Denis right in the fire right away, and that's interesting because originally I wanted to see Saint Denis get an easier top 10 matchup, but you might be right given that Dariush has fallen off a little bit, and he might be the right person in which you can create a fair but favorable matchup for Saint Denis. And the reason why I say that, if you're the UFC brand, Saint Denis has some buzz around him. You want to ride that as long as you can. And that's why I was a little skeptical about moving him up too quickly. But given that we've seen Dariush fall off, a little bit recently, and again, he's fallen off to the elite of the elite. So, you can't, it's really hard to say he's fallen off, too much.
Yeah.
But wow, that's a big pick. That's a big pick. All right, let's move on to the next fight. And this is the one Milo was watching most closely. Bobby Green, Jalen Turner. We both called it by finish. I called it for second round, I believe, submission by Jalen Turner. You said first round knockout, and oh my goodness, what a knockout that was. Talk to me about that.
I just knew it. I just knew it was gonna happen. It was bound to happen. He needed to get knocked out.
And for those of you watching for the first time, Milo doesn't like Bobby Green because he feels like he disrespected Tony Ferguson. And Tony Ferguson is a guy you don't disrespect. I never want to see, and while I was with you, I wanted to see Jalen Turner win. I don't want to see somebody get hurt beyond what's necessary, right? It's one thing to root for the knockout, but I mean, that stoppage was absolutely terrible. He was out, and it was, I think Michael Bisping said it best. I think he used the word, he said, "This is disgusting." I thought that knockout, do you think it went a little too long as well?
I think he was covering he had his hands up and stuff, and then they went down and he got like 3 punches on him when he was knocked out on the back of the head. So I think he, I don't know. I think he got one too many punches.
I think it was one too many, and I think it was Kerry Hadley was the ref, and it's interesting when we look at some issues with the refs recently. None of them, at least in the UFC, compare to this in terms of erroneous nature, right? I mean, this was bad, and I think Kerry Hadley should be fired, right? And there's a difference where if we look at some recent controversies, you have Mark Goddard calling the fight too early for Alex Pereira, but if you rewatch that, I still think it was too early. But from his angle, you can see that it looked like he collapsed to the ground, right? From his angle, so it's even though I thought it was a bad stoppage, you can make the argument. At least I understand from his perspective. Kerry Hadley had his face right in there staring at it. And I'm like, dude, what are you looking at? This dude's getting pounded and he can't defend himself. I mean, I think there's no place in the sport for that. I hope I never want to see somebody gets fired, but I mean, you not only have people's livelihoods on the line, you have people's lives on the line. I mean, this is it's refereeing's a tough job, but I think that referee, there's just absolutely no place for that. But with that said, let's talk about Jalen Turner. My goodness. I mean, he looked good. What are your what are your thoughts?
I think he has a ton of potential. So, yeah, I want to see him fight more.
You want to see him fight more? He has a ton of potential. I mean, he's right there. I think he was ranked number 11. He's a top 15 fighter. I think he does have title. How should I champion level skill set? Will he get there? I don't know. He's in the most stacked division. I actually have Jalen Turner matched up against RDA next. I believe he's 1 or 2 above him. And I think this is a fight where you can continue to build the Jalen Turner brand a little bit more as some of those older fighters in the lightweight division start to age out and slow down. We saw that with Beneil Dariush. At some point, we're going to see with Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler. We might have already started to see that with Justin Poirier. So there's an opportunity to build some of the brands of some of these fringe contenders. And I think that's what Jalen Turner is, and turn him into a real contender. I give him number 10. I give him RDA. And the reason, and I know I mentioned about Benoit Saint-Denis, excuse me. He's ranked number 11, and I would actually give him Bobby Green. That's who I would give next. So I wouldn't move him right up to number 4. I believe that's where Beneil Dariush was. I don't know, where he is right now after, in the aftermath of losing. But I would give Bobby Green Benoit Saint-Denis, because I think that is the quintessential platform upon which, or I should say the quintessential springboard upon which you can launch Benoit Saint-Denis in the stratosphere while still having some winnable yet credible fights ahead. Those are my 2 matchups. What do you think about that?
Maybe Dan Hooker.
Ooh, for who? Bobby Green or for Jalen Turner?
Jalen Turner.
That's a good one. Yeah, no, they just fought. They just fought. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Good Instincts was a great fight.
Yeah,
that was a great fight. So outside of,
I think I'm gonna have to agree with you. RDA would be a good fight. I think, yeah. I just wanted to disagree with you and think of somebody else that would be good. But yeah, RDA would be a good fight.
RDA, okay, we have a chance to disagree with me on this one. I picked Benoit Saint-Denis for Bobby Green next. Do you have somebody else, or do you want? You mentioned Saint-Denis for Dariush. Is there somebody else?
I think they should go somebody that's not as much as a up and coming guy. Coming off of a loss like that in the first round, I feel like he has to go lower than that, and he has to earn his way back up. So I don't.
Well, what might be an interesting fight. Now, I don't think they thought before, maybe Matt Frevola versus Bobby Green, right? They're both coming up losses. So maybe you're going Frevola, I'm going Benoit Saint Denis in terms of against whom we met Bobby Green next.
That sounds good.
All right, there we go. We just had to wait through that a little bit. Okay, so next up, Rob Font versus Figueiredo. I thought this was, to me, one of the most interesting fights on the card in terms of where I was before the fight started. I was so intrigued about what would happen, and I thought it was an appropriate matchup. Now, Figueiredo answered a lot of questions. Can he hang at the next weight class? Yeah, he can hang all right. But here's the thing that was problematic. He was stung a couple times by Rob Font's jab. Now, yes, Rob Font, that's his primary weapon. I mean, he's got a great jab, one of the better jabs in the division. But you can tell Figueiredo felt his power. And what that made me think is, what would Sean O'Malley do to him? Who he's not throwing jabs with precision, he's throwing clean strikes with precision. And I don't think he has any chance against somebody like Sean O'Malley. But with that said, he hurt Font. His this is one of my questions. Would his power carry up a weight class? It definitely carried up. He hurt Font, and he looked quick. And the other thing that, because if you watched his fights at flyweight, he used to have to cut so much weight. He looked, really slow and, a little bit plodding later in the rounds. He'd get a little bit tired. He's fighting all these championship fights, 5-round fights. Here he was bouncing around, light on his feet. And I mean, he looked pretty good. Now, move over to Rob Font. I think Font's win over Giannis, I think that was an aberration of where he is right now. I think he is definitely declining. I think he is still, a top 10 fighter in the bantamweight, but I think closer to 10 as opposed to, closer to 5. So matching these up, what I would do, Figueiredo's older, right? You got to do something with him right away, but you don't have enough hype to give him a title fight right now, and it's not really earned. I would match him up against Petr Yan. Yan is ranked number 5, hasn't fought in a while. I think that is the perfect stepping stone. You beat Yan, you can make the argument that you can get a shot at a title. I think Sandhagen would be a bit problematic for him. I wouldn't go there right now, but I think Yan is the right match to make. Do you agree or disagree?
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say Petr Yan, and then I wouldn't give him a title shot after that. I would actually, by the time he becomes, by the time that fight happens, Aljamain Sterling will probably be champ again.
Oh, you think Sterling's going to go back down and weight and fight in this division again?
Yeah. So I think, and then I think he should fight Sugar after that. When he's not champ. Gotcha. So yeah.
Okay, so you basically think you think Aljamain Sterling, after moving up to featherweight, is going to drop back down, and then he's going to get a rematch with O'Malley. He's going to beat O'Malley, and you're saying fight, or wait, you think O'Malley would win in that again?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so you're saying he would come off a loss to O'Malley, therefore he'd be ready for a fight against Figueiredo after he beats Yan.
Yep.
A lot of scenarios that need to play out, but I like that. Yeah, and and if you're looking long term, over the horizon, I think what you would do is if he beats Yan, he would have a ton of hype. Then you set it up with Sandhagen. He beats Sandhagen, then he fights the champ. So maybe you're right about that. But I do think if he beats Yan, he will have enough hype to really be able to sell that fight. So I think that'd be a great fight. Now moving over to Rob Font, what to do with him? What I would do with him is I would similar to what I'm doing with Dariush, but maybe not as far down in the rankings. I'm going to take somebody who's fallen out of the top 15, who is incredibly popular, particularly in the United Kingdom. I would match him up against Jack Shore. He still only has one loss. He has a big fan base. You give him an opportunity to get a win over a still, pretty top-ranked guy like Rob Font. That's what I would do next. What are your thoughts?
I'll agree with you. I think that's probably the best place to go. With the people that lose, it's kind of hard what to do with them. It takes a lot of hype out.
It does, and that's where you kind of got to look at, kind of the whole picture. If you're the UFC, what's a fair fight? What's going to be a good fight? What can be set in place where you have a marketable fight or something that can help one guy move up the rankings or so forth. So there's a multitude of different factors, and when you lose, you take a lot of that buzz away from somebody. I think when you're a top ranked guy and you lose, I think there's an opportunity sometimes to use them as a stepping stone, to higher rankings for somebody that once they get there, they might never leave.
Yep.
So awesome. Everything sounds good. Moving on to Brady versus Gastelum. So I was shocked by this fight. I don't know if it's that Brady looked good or if Gastelum looked bad. And the reason why Brady, and I mentioned in the preview, I've never been fully sold on Brady. The first really good high-level fighter he fought was Belal Muhammad, and he lost. I would say Kelvin Gastelum is the second high-level fighter. So I didn't take much stock in the undefeated record. But with that said, he controlled Gastelum, immediately and completely throughout the entire fight. But there was one thing that was concerning. He had complete control of his back. He had him in a complete dominant position in the first round. And somehow Kelvin Gastelum was able to get out of that. I don't know if you're that elite level grappler, you let somebody out. Imagine if Rodolfo Vieira had somebody in that position. There's no way. Well, first of all, that person that they're not getting out of that round, he's going to sub you. Now, not that Sean Brady is on that level in terms of grappling, but I think how a lot of people talk about it, they seem to think he's very elite. He might well be, right? And maybe it's just more of a style. Maybe it's more of a style thing. I don't know. I wasn't over, even though it was dominant, I wasn't overly impressed because I thought Kelvin Gastelum looked really bad. What are your thoughts?
I think it was a pretty boring fight to watch. I didn't like it very much, but yeah, I think they both didn't look that good in my opinion. Slow and yeah.
And that's really interesting. So what I would do next, he still won. He's calling for Ian Gary. I don't think he should get Ian Gary, who's above him. I think Ian Gary is a better fighter. And we're not going to get into the personal stuff with Ian Gary on this podcast, but I think he is the better fighter. And I would put him against Jack Della Maddalena. And I think Jack Della Maddalena smashes him. Now, if he beats JDM, then I'm going to start believing the hype, right? If he controls JDM. And it is also kind of interesting for JDM because he hasn't really proven himself against a top level grappler yet. What I think a lot of people believe Sean Brady to be. I think that is a great matchup. And I'm going to give a shout out to Keith Shilley, who was the one that I heard who first mentioned it. I still was thinking about that, but I did listen to his recap show, and he did mention that on the Shillen and Duffy show, and he did mention I could not agree more. I think that is spot on, and I don't only think that's a fight that should be made. I think that's a fight that has to be made. I think because whoever comes out of that is going to have so much momentum, and that becomes the young star on whom you can attach some pretty heavy hype for a little while. Do you agree with that matchup, or do you have a different one in mind?
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be a great matchup.
Yeah, I think that would be fun. Now, for Kelvin Gastelum, I would match him up. So he's not ranked, anymore. I'd match him up against Jeremiah Wells. Jeremiah Wells, is an unranked fighter who was dominant I think it was 4 or 5 fights in the UFC. Maybe not dominated in one of his fights, but he won. He won every fight. In many cases, he was completely dominant. I think it was Carlton Harris against whom he fought last, and he was absolutely beating the brakes off him the entire fight until Harris pulled up a third-round freak submission. Given his age, I'd like to see him get a named opponent. And since he's not ranked, he's getting a non-ranked fighter, Kevin Gastelum, excuse me. I think that would be a great fight. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he's another one of those stepping blocks that would be good for somebody to boost. Anybody with hype on their name, I think up and coming guys with hyper, and they would be a good fight for him. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be a great fight. All right, moving on to Clay Guida and Joaquim Silva. I believe you picked Guida in this, right? Or no, wait, who did you pick? I picked Silva, but I thought it was going to be a knockout.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about how you thought about this fight.
Boring.
Really? I thought this fight was insane. So you didn't like it?
No. I mean, it was a lot of back and forth, but like, I like to see people get knocked out. That's the best part about it.
I thought Joaquim Silva was gonna knock him out, and it's crazy because there was a point in the fight where Guida was in trouble, and Guida showed a lot of heart, and I guess where I'm amazed, at 41 years old, I thought he had nothing for Silva. Nothing. I mean, it's just that point where you're just too old, and he showed some grit, some toughness. It was back and forth. I thought it was such a fun fight. It did slow down in the third round, but I thought the first two rounds were really good. I thought it was time for Guida to retire. I don't think that's the case. I think he definitely spotted UFC 300. And he showed he can, hang with, some of the younger guys still, that are, a little lower in the rankings. So what I'm doing with Guida, I'm giving him Trey Ogden. He's an older fighter as well. So I think, give somebody closer to his own age, even though I think Ogden is like 36, or at least he fights like he's somebody that's 36. He's pretty slow and plodding. And I think that would be believe it or not, a fun matchup. And then I would give Silva, Chris Duncan. Next up, we had Soriano versus Stoltzfus. Soriano just throwing a left hook over and over again. Really needs greater diversity in his game. He'll never see the top 15. I will give him Chidi and Jokawani next. And Stoltzfus, he struggled in the first round, seemed to bring it around a little bit better. Still somebody who'll never see the top 15. I'm giving him Bo Nickel. Give him another stepping stone to keep moving closer to the rankings. As I know, Bo Nickel does want to take his time. I think that would be an appropriate fight. Next up, we have Tate versus Avila. Miesha Tate, again, 37. There was a lot of shockers in this fight, in this card. I was actually kind of blown away how well she was able to fight at this particular age. Avila looked horrible. I mean, she came off a long layoff. She had a child. She just, she did not look good. And I don't know if it was a long layoff or what it was, or if Miesha Tate, found the fountain of youth. But I would give her Aldana next, who is ranked number 5, and I would give Avila Lisboa next. Next up, we have Zachary Reese versus Cody Brundage. And boy, did I get this wrong. But I'll tell you this: if they fight 100 times, this is the only time that's going to happen. And I think if they fought 100 times, I think Brundage might only win 2. It's not that Reese is that proven. I think Brundage is that proven to not be that good. You're not supposed to pull somebody. You're not supposed to body slam somebody when they have a sub on you. But it worked. And what's crazy, it worked in the fight before that. I'm not going to match anybody up for the rest of these fights. We're just going to go pretty quickly.
My mom was actually watching this fight on the TV. And when she saw the guy get slammed, she was like, no. She was so sad. It was funny.
Did she feel bad for
Yeah, she felt bad.
Yeah, I mean, it was brutal. I mean, I think it hit him in the temple. I mean, it was absolutely brutal.
It looked like he kneed himself in the face, kind of, too.
Yeah, it was.
Like knocked himself out.
It was really. He crumbled after he hit the canvas. It was pretty insane. I mean, Brundage doesn't make the smartest decisions, but he seemed to be able to get away with it this time. And what's interesting, the fight before that, Drakkar Klose, again, that's a fight you called. He did the exact same thing. And I believe that the number of times where we've seen this work successfully in the UFC is like, I think between 12 or 14 times. It rarely works because what happens if you pull out, it locks the sub in deeper. So that's usually a big mistake. So Drakkar Klose, a spectacular finish as well, back-to-back slams while, in a submission, because I thought Solecki would actually be able to handle his business on the ground pretty well. That turned out not to be the case. Before that, we had Bellato versus Ihor Portier. I always mispronounce his name. I said in the preview that Bellato is tough. He's one of the toughest guys you'll fight. He's one of the toughest guys you'll find. And I think he's an appropriate addition to the UFC. The problem is he's not that good in terms of technique and overall skills. And Ihor was styling on him for a bit. But what it showed is over enough time, this guy can always come back. And he is going to be a problem for the lower tier in the UFC, particularly those who don't have a gas tank. So that was similar to what I expected, although I didn't think he would take as much damage from Ihor. Before that, Jared Gordon, Turner, Wellington Turner. Neither of these guys will see the top 15. Quick win by, I called him Gordon. It's Jared Gooden. Gooden, yeah. But I think Turman may have fought his last fight in the UFC. And before that, we had Veronica Hardy versus Horth. Horth looked terrible. And in particular, she looked terrible because she simply wouldn't activate. I mean, she was waiting to find a range against a fighter who was much quicker than her. And she was getting pieced apart the entire fight. I'm not high on either of these women. I don't think they will find the top 15 ever. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to, before we get into our regular sections, Kook of the Week and Kicking It with Milo, we're going to do a quick preview for this upcoming fight card. It's a fight night card. It definitely is nothing like the last fight card in terms of quality. This fight card's actually pretty poor. It is UFC Fight Night 233, Song Yadong versus Chris Gutierrez. This is pretty much the lowest level fight card you will see in the UFC. Even for a fight night, if I rate the quality of it, I would give it a D. If I rate my level of interest, I would pre-grade it a C. Milo, what are your thoughts?
An F minus for both.
Yeah, I mean, this is really a fight card really for the hardcore fans. It is really, I don't think Song Yadong or Chris Gutierrez should be headlining any fight card. You know, maybe appropriate for a co-main event. We'll go through these predictions pretty quickly. Again, and we also need to keep in mind the UFC, this was supposed to be in China. That fell through. So you have a different demo over there, a different audience, and you have some rising, you have some potential prospects that they wanted to showcase in that region. And that's, so it's not going to be the same over here. So again, different demo. So I understand what the UFC is doing, but with that said, it is a pretty poor fight card. So first up, Song Yadong. I mean, he's only 26 years old. He beat Ricky Simone and he looked dominant in his last fight. I like Song Yadong a lot. Chris Gutierrez, kind of an under the radar type fighter. Really solid fighter as well. I'm going Song Yadong I'm going to go decision.
I'm going to go Song Yadong by third round submission.
Third round submission. Okay. Interesting. I thought you were going knockout because you like to see the knockouts, and he does have a lot of power, does have some pop in his punches. So that one's going to be, that should actually be a good fight, even though it shouldn't be a main card fight. That is actually a pretty good fight. But next up, the co-main event, Anthony Smith versus Khalil Rountree. I think this is going to be a fun fight because, Milo, you want to see somebody get knocked out or somebody finish, this will happen. Now, Anthony Smith, he's much older. He's looked a lot slower lately. But if you look at his his finish rate is absolutely insane. And I'm going to bring that up real quickly because he has 37 wins, 34 by finish, which is absolutely insane. And so there is a possibility the crafty veteran can lock in a sub at any time. But his last couple fights, he's starting to slow down quickly. Move over to Khalil Rountree. This dude has power. He has massive power. He can put anybody out at any time. And given Anthony Smith's age and given that he has slowed down a bit, I'm going to predict second round knockout Khalil Rountree. Milo, what's your prediction?
I'm gonna go first round knockout, Anthony Smith.
Seriously, you think Anthony Smith is going to get a first round knockout?
Yep.
Are you saying that because are you trying to go the opposite of me?
Exactly.
Okay, all right. So there we go, Milo's pick, but he's going to look like a genius if that comes to fruition. All right, next up, Nasrat Haqparast and versus Jamey Mullarkey. This should be an interesting fight, but again, third from the top, not really a lot of sizzle. Jamey Mullarkey is kind of slow and plodding, but he moves forward, has some incredible toughness. Haqparast has better speed, better athleticism. I am going to go with Haqparast by decision.
I think I'm going to go with Jamey by third round knockout.
Third round knockout. You think he's just going to wear him down with that constant pressure and toughness, and he's probably going to take a beating and then be able to. And he's done that. We have seen him take a beating and then he wears on people. I mean, he just doesn't stop because he's got that incredible toughness. Okay, next up, and I think this is the fight in which I'm most interested. Jun Yong Park versus Andre Muniz. I think this is a really good fight. I think this should be the co-main event, or actually, I think this should actually be the co-main event, given that you have a different main event fight up there. I would. Park has won. I looked at it the other day, and again, I don't know why I keep doing this on memory. I think he's won 6 out of 8 fights. I'm just going to look real quickly. Oh, he's won 4 in a row. Oh, geez, 4 in a row, and he's won 7 out of 8. So he's been hot. He's good. He's solid. He's all around. He's not a great athlete, but he is a solid, kind of an he's got a kind of a fun personality, a guy that you can get behind. Muniz. Now, Muniz had all the hype in the world a while ago. People were talking about him being that puzzle that Israel Adesanya would have to figure out on the ground. He was subbing people pretty quickly. But then he came across Brendan Allen and Paul Craig, and it ended quickly, and it did not look good for him. I'm still going to go with him because I think Brendan Allen is a legit contender for the title. Paul Craig is not a contender, but he's an excellent submission specialist. Then again, I was a little alarmed by what I saw in that last fight between Paul Craig and Muniz. With that said, though, I am still going to go with Muniz, and I am going to go second round submission. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Muniz with the second round submission for sure. I know I'm going to be right on that one. Second round, definitely round.
Yeah. And it's funny with him, he needs to get a sub early before he gasses out because he tends to look a little tired later on. But I think, he's a big dude. I mean, the guy's absolutely massive. Okay, so now we're going to go Cook of the Week. Do you have a Cook of the Week?
I think I'm going to have to give it to my dad for walking in the screen.
So your dad has now been, this is our 5th podcast. He has been Cook of the Week. At least between one of us has selected him Cook of the Week 4 out of 5 weeks. Should we call this? Should we call this the LG Award?
Yep.
For those of you who don't know, that's what we call his dad, LG. That's his nickname. So this is the LG Award. It's no longer the Cook of the Week because your dad is the personification of a kook, particularly for looking behind you right in the middle of a podcast. But that's absolutely terrible. But what I'm going to do, it's Kerry Hadley. It's the ref. I mean, the ref who blew it on that scale where you can really damage somebody's career and their livelihood. I mean, that was a dangerous lack of a stoppage. And it wasn't that he was blocked. There's certain things, like I said earlier, I can understand when certain things don't go, when certain things don't go well, or you have a lapse of judgment. He's staring at him. He's right there looking in closely. What are you looking at, dude? That was absolutely terrible. So that's my Cook of the Week. All right, now we're going to get to our last section. This is called Kicking It with Milo. As many of you know by now, Milo is one of the top up-and-coming amateur surfers in the United States. I hope you watched the last video where he did that cool 360 rotation air, which shocked everybody, including himself. But he also has a propensity to get in trouble a little bit. So we're going to talk about that. When was the last time you were at trouble? We know your dad gets mad at you. You said every day. Is that still the case?
Yeah.
Okay. When was the last time you got in trouble at school?
At school? Ooh. Probably today.
Today? What did you do today? Why are you always getting in trouble every day we talk?
I walked in late to English because I had to get my Chromebook fixed. And he got really mad at me.
Why didn't you think ahead? Why didn't you plan ahead?
Because the lady took so long with my Chromebook. She was moving in slow motion, and I was at lunch, and then lunch ended and she was still going, so I had to wait for her.
Did you get it fixed at school, or is this something you couldn't have done on the weekend?
At school.
Oh, so you had okay. So you kind of had a little bit of an excuse there.
Yeah, but he was mad.
Okay. But he was mad anyways.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your favorite class at school?
History is really fun.
History. What are you guys studying now?
We're studying history and history.
The history of history?
Yeah.
Awesome. No, that sounds fun. When's your next big contest?
In 2 weeks I have the USA Prime. It's the best surfers in USA all go against each other. And people come.
Nice. Where?
People come. It's gonna be in Huntington Beach, and people will come from Florida even to do the events. So yeah.
Oh, nice. And how do you think you'll do?
All right, I hope.
You hope? All right. Well,
Yeah.
you're way too humble. If I had your skill set, I definitely would not be humble. That's all I have. Milo, do you have a last word?
Drop the mic.
You're out.